All right. Welcome back to another episode of Automotivated. I am privileged to be here with Jim Park, and Jim Park has already blown my mind with everything that he does. So, not only is he the equipment editor for Heavy Duty Trucking Magazine and truckinginfo.com, but you were telling me you've also been a driver for over 20 years and an editor for 24 years as well.
Yeah, I'm afraid I have to admit that. Yeah, I've been I've been in the industry since 1978. I started back in the old days. I started as a driver, became an owner operator, had a small fleet of my own, just a few trucks, and basically stopped driving in the mid 90s. Worked in radio for a while and pursued a career in journalism beginning around 98, 99. And well, here it is, 2021, and I'm still at it.
That's amazing. It's always so interesting because we were talking right before we came live on this live stream. Sometimes it's hard to get out of the industry, and you're like, it used to be a lot harder to get in it. And it's fascinating to me how you've really been able to transcend your career over, doing different things, but all related to a very similar industry.
Well, it was sort of fortunate. I didn't know I had a knack for writing. Never was very good in English in high school. I went to college as a theater technician, of all things. Got bored with that, started driving trucks, and uh, one thing led to another. I started writing letters to editors, to trucking magazines, and they said, hey, you can write pretty well. You want to do a story for us? I said, sure. So one story that I did for one magazine led to some interest from other magazines, and that's how the writing career started. But really, I had no idea I was going to go in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I did finally break into journalism, if you will, I found that the background I had from the driving side, my years as a driver and a trucker, really served me well, in knowing the questions to ask in interviews about engines and transmissions and what have you. So
Mm-hmm.
it served me pretty well over the years.
And that's why we had to steal you for one of our episodes of Automotivated. And I know we have a really great lineup here of some conversations that we think are going to be really valuable, especially for some of our fleet customers. So, with all of the experience that you have within the industry, what would you say are some of the basic do's and don'ts of fleet maintenance management?
Well, I think the biggest don't is don't push your luck. When parts only last so long. We found out numerous times over the years when trade cycles were different, the economy started going down, fleets started trying to push their trade cycles out a little bit longer, get a few more miles or months out of their equipment, and it blew up in their face. Because, I mean, you spec a truck, you buy it to last 5 years, you load it up with warranty, you run it for a period of time, and then you ditch it.
Mm-hmm.
That way you don't incur too much additional costs that unplanned costs. But when you keep it longer and then throughout that first 5 years of its life, you haven't put in the maintenance that it needed just because you did the minimum on it, it's a business strategy. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get to that 5 year point and you realize you can't trade the truck because it's, residual values down or you still need trucks, whatever the case may be, and you push it, that's when it's going to come back to bite you. So my biggest bit of advice is, change out components when they're due to be changed out. Don't try and extend your oil drain intervals without, doing proper oil sampling. Don't push your tire treads down to the DOT minimums because that's when all the punctures start to occur. The tread's not thick enough to prevent the screws from going through it. Everything you do in some effort to try and extend the life of a component or the truck itself is going to bite you. Period. That's my experience.
I think that's a really great point because I mean, when it comes to fleets, I mean, day in, day out, you're on the road. So if you try to push it, I mean, not only is it the safety and then the time lost if things don't work out, but then just the longevity of all the equipment that you're using as well. So I think that's a really great thing that people, where you think you're winning in the day, you're losing in the long run.
Winning the battle but losing the war.
Oh, that's the truth. So, how does technology affect fleet operations? How have you seen that really become beneficial, especially within the recent years?
Well, technology, depending how you define it's given us an eye into the inner workings of our trucks that we never had before. It's enabled us to do a much better job at predicting when components are going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily by telling you, as the alternator, hey, I'm getting hot, I'm wearing out, you better change me. But you've seen over the life of 20, 30, 100 trucks that alternators failed at 250,000 miles.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty good chance the next one on the lot's going to fail at 250,000. Why not pull it while it's in the shop
Mm-hmm.
as a planned and predicted event? Take it in for a core, get your money back on it, and then move on with a fresh one that's not going to let you down, out in Hoboken somewhere where
Mm-hmm.
you really don't need to be. It's really about customer service and downtime.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, and it's counterintuitive, really to take off what appears to be a perfectly good part
Mm-hmm.
and send it in for a core when in fact, if it's going to fail soon, you just don't know when soon is. Like I said, don't
Mm-hmm.
push your luck. When that alternator or starter lets you down, it's going to cost you money, and it's going to be downtime. It's going to be an unhappy driver. It's going to be an unhappy customer. Could be a tow. So, a relatively insignificant part, the failure of a relatively insignificant part can sure cost you an awful lot of money.
Mm-hmm. And I think
So,
you made a really good point. With all the technology, you have data, and data can help you make those better informed decisions, as long as you're utilizing it properly. So, what would you say, what role does technology play in generating that data? And what are some of your tips on, managing that data for fleets?
well, the expression everybody uses, and it's so appropriate, is drinking from a fire hose. There's so much data coming off a truck. They say like 4 gigabytes a day of data that a truck produces. So you can imagine all the tires and transmissions and engines and
Mm-hmm.
differentials and umpteen different systems on board the truck all streaming data back to you. And now the trailer's getting into the act. There's all sorts of systems on board the trailers now that we have to contend with. Filtering out that data is, you really have to tweak your maintenance software pretty carefully
Mm-hmm.
just to make sure you're only getting the notifications that you need, the out of normal conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Most of this maintenance software I've seen enables you to do that. I mean, the poor fleet manager, he gets an email every time, it gets a low tire pressure warning.
Yep.
He never put his phone back in his pocket. It's
Mm-hmm.
just crazy. So you really have to filter it carefully, but at the same time, pay attention to the alerts you're getting because
Mm-hmm.
in there's going to be some downtime and some costs that you can save if you react to it. Like a tire, for example, if you see it heating up, if you can alert the driver to stop before the tire explodes, then you've saved the tire. Maybe not forever, but at least you haven't got an alligator on the highway and a possible collision or an accident with the tire. So if you can stay on top of warnings like that, you can prevent bad things from happening. Wheel end, hub temperatures. We all
Mm-hmm.
know there's a lot of thermal events involving stuck brakes, flat tires that get too hot and catch fire.
Mm-hmm.
If you see that starting to develop before it actually becomes a fire, then you get the truck off the road, get it stopped, and you save a big calamity. So
Mm-hmm.
really, when it comes to data, it's all there. You pick and choose what you want and filter it
Mm-hmm.
carefully, and pay attention to the warnings and try and ignore some of the other stuff because it'll drive you nuts otherwise.
Absolutely. And I think that really, which leads into our next point of, how you're supposed to streamline fleet operations. So you have all this data, you need to filter what's most important, but then move on the things that, could be detrimental, today, tomorrow, next week, next month. And I know you had mentioned a little bit about the fleet inspection lanes. So can you tell us, what are some of your best recommendations for streamlining some of these fleet operations and how users can stay ahead?
Well, yeah, the inspection lane idea. Some fleets have embraced it with great success.
Mm-hmm.
Others not so much. They just see it as a cost and something else they have to worry about in the yard. But the fleets that do it well, literally every truck that drives in the gate, the first place it goes is into an inspection lane.
Mm-hmm.
Not to the fuel pumps. The driver doesn't go to the bathroom first. Everything goes over that inspection lane. And one or two techs who are, paid to do that. That's their job. They don't have to wait in the shop for a truck to come in and put down what
Mm-hmm.
they're doing and run out and deal with it. So the truck comes in and they go over it, stem to stern, visually. They look at tire pressures, they feel the tires, they feel the hubs, they look at the brake lines. They do a really quick visual inspection and they talk to the driver. So what have you noticed about the truck? Is it making any weird noises? Is it pull to the right, pull to the left? Do all the lights work? Have you seen anything on here we need to pay attention on? It's a little bit like a live vehicle inspection report that the driver fills out at the end of the day, except those, whether they're electronic or on bits of paper, tend to get thrown into a filing cabinet or on a tray on top of a filing cabinet, and then they get lost, and then before you know it, that truck's turned around, it's back out the gate, the driver's gone home. So the connection between the vehicle when it comes in the gate nice and fresh and somebody can get on it and start to do any work that needs to be done is lost once all the paper and the driver and the truck are separated. So the inspection lane, yeah, it's a cost. If whether you build a circus tent kind of thing over the inspection lane to keep the crew dry, or you put an actual building up, I mean, that's really taking it to extreme. Maybe build a pit that the folks can get down in and look around. It really depends how deep you want to go into it. But the value of that quick inspection right there on the spot, and while it's fresh in the driver's mind, if there's anything that the truck's doing, that's really important, but it's also an investment. And you can do it in a low-key way, too. If you're only a small fleet with 20 trucks, just make it a priority with that. When the truck pulls into the yard, the driver takes the truck to the inspection area. Somebody does the inspection before, as I said, everything gets separated and goes their own way, because then it's all lost.
Absolutely. Yeah. The efficiency of how that sounds really does seem, to your point, yes, an investment, but what that investment will do for you in the long term is really going to add great value to your whole day-to-day operations. So how can fleet managers identify and resolve some problems to become more streamlined? So we know that these fleet service or these fleet inspection lanes have become a really great way to streamline operations. But what do you feel are the biggest problems right now for getting some of these things streamlined?
I think it's just, person hours, labor time,
Sure.
So much to do, so little time to do it, and nowadays so few people to do it. We're having a difficult time recruiting and retraining technicians, drivers as well. The industry is growing in leaps and bounds. Demand for trucks now is at an all-time high. So when you've got conflicts with operations and dispatch, you want that truck back on the road earning money. And the maintenance people saying, no, we need to keep it here because we have to change that alternator that's going to break down in Hoboken 3 days from now and cost you all kinds of grief and money. Somehow those conversations never happen, and they turn into conflict. So the biggest challenge really is having the time and the human resources to get all this done. There's a lot.
Well, the tech shortage
more
is
complex.
real.
It's in some ways easier because they're telling you what's wrong with them. In other ways, there's just more stuff to chase down. So double-edged sword.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, and that makes sense. I mean, across the board with just how difficult it is with hiring specifically technicians. And speaking of technicians, what role do you feel that the technicians and the drivers play in proper fleet management? How do they differ, but also, how can they work together?
Well, they're really the eyes and the ears of the fleet, right? Of the maintenance department, and especially the driver. A lot of fleets really don't like to include the driver in the maintenance program, and they're not. They're not fixing stuff, hopefully, at least on the side of the road. But they need to be able to convey to the technicians in the maintenance department when something's wrong with the truck. So, I mean, drivers do need a pretty basic knowledge of the truck themselves, like tire temperature, for example. When you do your walk around inspection, you touch the tire, you kick the tire to make sure it's not flat, and you touch it, and it's hot or it's warm. Like what is that temperature threshold? Obviously you're not going to burn your fingers because then it's too hot. But how do you get a sense as a driver that the truck is not right? Smells, sounds, squeaks, feels, those sorts of things that generally only come with a bit of experience. Fleets can do these one-on-one things with drivers, or even in a classroom setting, like, driver inspection 101, where you walk around and smell tires, smell brakes, get to know what those smells are. So
Hmm.
when you smell them yourself, you can convey that message to the fleet. I once did a story called "Was that a clink or a clunk?" Uh,
Yes.
think about that. It's so simple. You
Hmm.
noise. Well, what does it sound like? So how to describe those sounds, right? Was it a
Sure.
clink or a clunk? Because it's probably
Hmm.
different, and an astute technician will be able to go, oh, well, a clunk is this and a clink is that. So I know where to
Hmm.
look for the problem. But anyway, eyes and ears, drivers and techs, yeah, they have to work together. And I think, fleets need to try to avoid overworking their technicians. I know that sounds like I'm
Sure.
letting them off the hook, but a lot of them get paid on a flat rate for a job, so they'll try and
Sure.
rush as many jobs through in a day as they can. And when you've got a job like a wheel bearing, for example, and
Hmm.
you're installing a wheel bearing, it's not a complicated process, but you have to be deliberate, take your time, and do it properly. Especially the last couple of steps where you're tightening the bearing into its precise tolerances. That's just an example. But if you're rushing that process and you don't
Hmm.
tighten the bearing properly, one of two things will happen. The wheel will fall off because the bearing came loose, or it'll burn up because it was too tight. Either
Absolutely.
way, the outcome is undesirable. So it really doesn't pay to try and rush a technician through a process like that when they should be taking their time and doing it right.
Hmm. Absolutely. No. And I think those are all really great points. And, what it comes down to is looking to make the industry that much more streamlined, that much more deliberate, to your point, streamlined across the board, which I think is great. So I think this has been a really great automotivated. It's really nice to get a different perspective, specifically from fleet management, because a lot of what it is that we've done in the past has been around auto repair shops and how they can streamline their operations, but really it's how we can streamline operations all the way across the road, and how we make our roads a safer place, not only for our drivers but for our teams as well. So Jim, I appreciate you joining us today. It has been a pleasure getting to speak with you, and we hope to have you back for another Automotivated soon.
Well, thanks, Shona. I'd love to come back again. It was fun. Appreciate it.
Great. And for everybody who's watching, any questions that you have, if you're a part of a fleet management, let us know what it is that you're dealing with. Let us know what you want to hear about next, and then we will talk to you again in 2 weeks. Thank you so much.